Are we live? I think we are live. It looks like we're live. Woohoo! So today we're going to be listening to the Emerald City of Oz, at least the first 2 hours-ish of it. And I'll be doing some organization of my fish ponds. And there is a new mod. It's called you can have up to 10 different types of fish in a fish pond. Up to 40 total fish in the fish ponds. So I'm looking over there because I'm looking to make sure I'm still in the same screen, and I'm used to like looking over there for the chat too. Excuse me, that was a big gulp. Hi, Angie. I will, Angie. I will let you know when things get like I'll pause the book stream and things when I plan to go explosive. Am I kind of quiet? Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe my headset's in the wrong spot. Okay, I'll shove the gain up a little bit because I had some wiggle room. How's that? Is that good? I'll find out in a second, I suppose. Just a touch. Just a touch better? Okay. Let us see. Where would I change that? Properties. Better? Okay, good. Good. Okay, then I won't fiddle and fart around with that then. I will pause the book and let you know when we get to the spot that's going to be a little bit exciting. We'll say. Does that work? Does that work for you? Exciting. So yeah, I'll let you know. I'll give you notice so you can have a look at the screen. Yay! And I'll turn things up a notch to see how it goes. But I got about a week in game before that, so I'm not even sure if I'll get there today, like while we're streaming, but I'll try. And I just got a notification. I'm just going to check that. I think that was probably Faye or somebody. Yep. So I think Faye might be on her way. Yeah. Okay, so I will start up that book if you.
Chapter 1 of the Emerald City of Oz. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Phil Chenevert. The Emerald City of Oz by Frank L. Baum. Chapter 1. How the Gnome King Became Angry. The Gnome King was in an angry mood, and at such times he was very disagreeable. Everyone kept away from him, even his chief steward Kaliko. Therefore the king stormed and raved all by himself, walking up and down in his jewel-studded cavern, and getting angrier all the time. Then he remembered that it was no fun being angry, unless he had someone to frighten and make miserable, and he rushed to his big gong and made it clatter as loud as he could. In came the chief steward, trying not to show the Gnome King how frightened he was. "Send the chief counselor here!" shouted the angry monarch. Kaliko ran out as fast as his spindle legs could carry his fat round body, and soon the chief counselor entered the cavern. The king scowled and said to him, I'm in great trouble over the loss of my magic belt. Every little while I want to do something magical, and find I can't, because the belt is gone. That makes me angry, and when I'm angry, I can't have a good time. Now, what do you advise? Some people, said the chief counselor, enjoy getting angry. But not all the time, declared the king. To be angry once in a while is really good fun, because it makes others so miserable. But to be angry morning, noon, and night, as I am, grows monotonous, and prevents my gaining any other pleasure in life. Now, what do you advise? Why, if you are angry because you want to do magical things and can't, and if you don't want to get angry at all, my advice is not to want to do magical things. Hearing this, the king glared at his counselor with a furious expression, and tugged at his own long white whiskers until he pulled them so hard that he yelled with pain. "You are a fool!" he exclaimed. "I share that honor with your majesty," said the chief counselor. The king roared with rage and stamped his foot. "Ho there, my guards!" he cried. Ho is a royal way of saying, "Come here." So when the guards had hoed, the king said to them, "Take this chief counselor and throw him away." Then the guards took the chief counselor and bound him with chains to prevent his struggling, and threw him away. And the king paced up and down his cavern, more angry than before. Finally he rushed to his big gong and made it clatter like a fire alarm. Kaliko appeared again, trembling and white with fear. "Fetch my pipe!" yelled the king. "Your pipe is already here, your majesty," replied Kaliko. "Then get my tobacco!" roared the king. "The tobacco is in your pipe, your majesty," returned the steward. "Then bring a live coal from the furnace," commanded the king. "The tobacco is lighted, and your majesty is already smoking your pipe," answered the steward. "Why, so I am," said the king, who had forgotten this fact. "But you are very rude to remind me of it." "I am a low-born, miserable villain," declared the chief steward humbly. The Nome King could think of nothing to say next, so he puffed away at his pipe and paced up and down the room. Finally he remembered how angry he was, and cried out, "What do you mean, Kaliko, by being so contented when your monarch is unhappy?" "What makes you unhappy?" asked the steward. "I've lost my magic belt. A little girl named Dorothy, who was here with Ozma of Oz, stole my belt and carried it away with her," said the king, grinding his teeth with rage. "She captured it in a fair fight," Kaliko ventured to say. "But I want it. I must have it. Half my power is gone with that belt," roared the king. "You will have to go to the Land of Oz to recover it, and your majesty can't get to the Land of Oz in any possible way," said the steward, yawning because he had been on duty 96 hours and was sleepy. "Why not?" asked the king. "Because there is a deadly desert all around that fairy country which no one is able to cross. You know that fact as well as I do, your majesty. Never mind the lost belt. You have plenty of power left, for you rule this underground kingdom like a tyrant, and thousands of gnomes obey your commands. I advise you to drink a glass of melted silver to quiet your nerves, and then go to bed." The king grabbed a big ruby and threw it at Kaliko's head. The steward ducked to escape the heavy jewel, which crashed against the door just over his left ear. "Get out of my sight! Vanish! Go away! And send General Blug here!" screamed the Nome King. Kaliko hastily withdrew, and the Nome King stamped up and down until the general of his armies appeared. This gnome was known far and wide as a terrible fighter and a cruel, desperate commander. He had 50,000 gnome soldiers, all well drilled, who feared nothing but their stern master. Yet General Blug was a trifle uneasy when he arrived and saw how angry the Nome King was. "Ha! So you're here!" cried the king. "So I am," said the general. March your army at once to the land of Oz, capture and destroy the Emerald City, and bring back to me my magic belt!" roared the king. "You're crazy," calmly remarked the general. "What's that? What's that? What's that?" And the Nome King danced around on his pointed toes, he was so enraged. "You don't know what you're talking about," continued the general, seating himself upon a large cut diamond. "I advise you to stand in a corner and count 60 before you speak again. By that time you may be more sensible." The king looked around for something to throw at General Blug, but as nothing was handy, he began to consider that perhaps the man was right and he had been talking foolishly. So he merely threw himself into his glittering throne and tipped his crown over his ear and curled his feet up under him and glared wickedly at Blug. "In the first place," said the general, "we cannot march across the deadly desert to the land of Oz, and if we could, the ruler of that country, Princess Ozma, has certain fairy powers that would render my army helpless. Had you not lost your magic belt, we might have some chance of defeating Ozma, but the belt is gone." "I want it!" screamed the king. "I must have it!" "Well, then, let us try a sensible way to get it," replied the general. "The belt was captured by a little girl named Dorothy, who lives in Kansas, in the United States of America." "But she left it in the Emerald City with Ozma," declared the king. "How do you know that?" asked the general. "One of my spies, who is a blackbird, flew over the desert to the land of Oz and saw the magic belt in Ozma's palace," replied the king with a groan. "Now that gives me an idea," said General Blug thoughtfully. "There are two ways to get to the land of Oz without traveling across the sandy desert." "What are they?" demanded the king eagerly. "One way is over the desert, through the air, and the other way is under the desert, through the earth." Hearing this, the Nome King uttered a yell of joy and leaped from his throne to resume his wild walk up and down the cavern. "That's it, Blug!" he shouted. "That's the idea, General. I'm king of the underworld, and my subjects are all miners. I'll make a secret tunnel under the desert to the land of Oz. Yes, right up to the Emerald City, and you will march your armies there and capture the whole country." "Softly, softly, Your Majesty. Don't go too fast," warned the general. "My nomes are good fighters, but they are not strong enough to conquer the Emerald City." "Are you sure?" asked the king. "Absolutely certain, Your Majesty." "Then what am I to do?" "Give up the idea and mind your own business," advised the general. "You have plenty to do trying to rule your underground kingdom." "But I want the magic belt, and I'm going to have it!" roared the Nome King. "I'd like to see you get it," replied the general, laughing maliciously. The king was by this time so exasperated that he picked up his scepter, which had a heavy ball made from a sapphire at the end of it, and threw it with all his force at General Blug. The sapphire hit the general upon his forehead and knocked him flat upon the ground, where he lay motionless. Then the king rang his gong and told his guards to drag out the general and throw him away, which they did. The Nome King was named Roquat the Red, and no one loved him. He was a bad man and a powerful monarch, and he had resolved to destroy the land of Oz and its magnificent Emerald City, to enslave Princess Ozma and little Dorothy and all the Oz people, and recover his magic belt. This same belt had once enabled Roquat the Red to carry out many wicked plans, but that was before Ozma and her people marched to the underground cavern and captured it. The Nome King could not forgive Dorothy or Princess Ozma, and he had determined to be revenged upon them. But they, for their part, did not know they had so dangerous an enemy. Indeed, Ozma and Dorothy had both almost forgotten that such a person as the Nome King yet lived under the mountains of the Land of Ev, which lay just across the Deadly Desert to the south of the Land of Oz. An unsuspected enemy is doubly dangerous. End of chapter 1. Chapter 2 of The Emerald City of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2, How Uncle Henry Got into Trouble. Dorothy Gale lived on a farm in Kansas with her Aunt Em and her Uncle Henry. It was not a big farm, nor a very good one, because sometimes the rain did not come when the crops needed it, and then everything withered and dried up. Once a cyclone had carried away Uncle Henry's house, so that he was obliged to build another, and as he was a poor man he had to mortgage his farm to get the money to pay for the new house. Then his health became bad, and he was too feeble to work. The doctor ordered him to take a sea voyage, and he went to Australia and took Dorothy with him. That cost a lot of money, too. Uncle Henry grew poorer every year, and the crops raised on the farm only brought food for the family. Therefore the mortgage could not be paid. At last the banker who had loaned him the money said that if he did not pay on a certain day his farm would be taken away from him. This worried Uncle Henry a good deal, for without the farm he would have no way to earn a living. He was a good man and worked in the field as hard as he could, and Aunt Em did all the housework with Dorothy's help. Yet they did not seem to get along. This little girl, Dorothy, was like dozens of little girls you know. She was loving and usually sweet-tempered, and had a round, rosy face and earnest eyes. Life was a serious thing to Dorothy, and a wonderful thing, too, for she had encountered more strange adventures in her short life than many other girls of her age. Aunt Em once said she thought the fairies must have marked Dorothy at her birth, because she had wandered into strange places and had always been protected by some unseen power. As for Uncle Henry, he thought his little niece merely a dreamer, as her dead mother had been, for he could not quite believe all the curious stories Dorothy told him of the Land of Oz, which she had several times visited. He did not think that she tried to deceive her uncle and aunt, but he imagined that she had dreamed all those astonishing adventures, and that the dreams had been so real to her that she had come to believe them true. Whatever the explanation might be, it was certain that Dorothy had been absent from her Kansas home for several long periods, always disappearing unexpectedly, yet always coming back safe and sound, with amazing tales of where she had been and the unusual people she had met. Her uncle and aunt listened to her stories eagerly, and in spite of their doubts began to feel that the little girl had gained a lot of experience and wisdom that were unaccountable in this age when fairies are supposed no longer to exist. Most of Dorothy's stories were about the Land of Oz, with its beautiful Emerald City, and the lovely girl ruler named Ozma, who was the most faithful friend of the little Kansas girl. When Dorothy told about the riches of this fairy country, Uncle Henry would sigh, for he knew that a single one of the great emeralds that were so common there would pay all his debts and leave his farm free. But Dorothy never brought any jewels home with her, so their poverty became greater every year. When the banker told Uncle Henry that he must pay the money in 30 days or leave the farm, the poor man was in despair, as he knew he could not possibly get the money. So he told his wife, Aunt Em, of his trouble, and she first cried a little and then said that they must be brave and do the best they could, and go away somewhere and try to earn an honest living. But they were getting old and feeble, and she feared that they would not take care of Dorothy as well as they had formerly done. Probably the little girl would also be obliged to go to work. They did not tell their niece the sad news for several days, not wishing to make her unhappy, But one morning the little girl found Aunt Em softly crying while Uncle Henry tried to comfort her. Then Dorothy asked them to tell her what was the matter. "We must give up the farm, my dear," replied her uncle sadly, "and wander away into the world to work for our living." The girl listened quite seriously, for she had not known before how desperately poor they were. "We don't mind for ourselves," said her aunt, stroking the little girl's head tenderly, "but we love you as if you were our own child, and we are heartbroken to think that you must also endure poverty and work for a living before you have grown big and strong." "What could I do to earn money?" asked Dorothy. "You might do housework for someone, dear, you are so handy, or perhaps you could be a nursemaid to little children. I'm sure I don't know exactly what you can do to earn money, but if your uncle and I are able to support you we will do it willingly, and send you to school. We fear, though, that we shall have much trouble in earning a living for ourselves. No one wants to employ old people who are broken down in health, as we are." Dorothy smiled. "Wouldn't it be funny," she said, "for me to do housework in Kansas when I'm a princess in the land of Oz?" "A princess!" they both exclaimed, astonished. "Yes, Ozma made me a princess some time ago, and she has often begged me to come and live always in the Emerald City," said the child. Her uncle and aunt looked at her in amazement. Then the man said, "Do you suppose you could manage to return to your fairyland, my dear?" "Oh, yes," replied Dorothy, "I could do that easily." "How?" asked Aunt Em. "Ozma sees me every day at 4 o'clock in her magic picture. She can see me wherever I am, no matter what I am doing, and at that time, if I make a certain secret sign, she will send for me by means of the magic belt which I once captured from the Nome King. Then, in the wink of an eye, I shall be with Ozma in her palace." The elder people remained silent for some time after Dorothy had spoken. Finally Aunt Em said, with another sigh of regret, "If that is the case, Dorothy, perhaps you'd better go and live in the Emerald City. It will break our hearts to lose you from our lives, but you will be so much better off with your fairy friends that it seems wisest and best for you to go." "I'm not so sure about that," remarked Uncle Henry, shaking his gray head doubtfully. "These things all seem very real to Dorothy, I know, but I'm afraid our little girl won't find her fairyland just what she had dreamed it to be. It would make me very unhappy to think that she was wandering among strangers who might be unkind to her." Dorothy laughed merrily at this speech, and then she became very sober again, for she could see how all this trouble was worrying her aunt and uncle, and knew that unless she found a way to help them, their future lives would be quite miserable and unhappy. She knew that she could help them. She had thought of a way already. Yet she did not tell them at once what it was, because she must ask Ozma's consent before she would be able to carry out her plans. So she only said, "If you will promise not to worry a bit about me, I'll go to the Land of Oz this very afternoon, and I'll make a promise, too, that you shall both see me again before the day comes when you must leave this farm." "That day isn't far away now," her uncle sadly replied. "I did not tell you of our trouble until I was obliged to, dear Dorothy, so the evil time is near at hand. But if you are quite sure your fairy friends will give you a home, it will be best for you to go to them, as your aunt says." That was why Dorothy went to her little room in the attic that afternoon, taking with her a small dog named Toto. The dog had curly black hair and big brown eyes, and loved Dorothy very dearly. The child had kissed her uncle and aunt affectionately before she went upstairs, and now she looked around her little room rather wistfully, gazing at the simple trinkets and worn calico and gingham dresses as if they were old friends. She was tempted at first to make a bundle of them, yet she knew very well that they would be of no use to her in her future life. She sat down upon a broken backed chair. the only one the room contained, and, holding Toto in her arms, waited patiently until the clock struck 4. Then she made the secret signal that had been agreed upon between her and Ozma. Uncle Henry and Aunt Em waited downstairs. They were uneasy and a good deal excited, for this is a practical humdrum world, and it seemed to them quite impossible that their little niece could vanish from her home and travel instantly to Fairyland. So they watched the stairs, which seemed to be the only way that Dorothy could get out of the farmhouse, and they watched them a long time. They heard the clock strike 4, but there was no sound from above. 4:30 came, and now they were too impatient to wait any longer. Softly they crept up the stairs to the door of the little girl's room. "Dorothy, Dorothy!" they called. There was no answer. They opened the door and looked in. The room was empty. End of chapter 2. Chapter 3 of the Emerald City of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 3. How Ozma Granted Dorothy's Request. I suppose you have read so much about the magnificent Emerald City that there is little need for me to describe it here. It is the capital city of the Land of Oz, which is justly considered the most attractive and delightful fairyland in all the world. The Emerald City is built all of beautiful marbles, in which are set a profusion of emeralds, every one exquisitely cut and of very great size. There are other jewels used in the decorations inside the houses and palaces, such as rubies, diamonds, sapphires, amethysts, and turquoises. But in the streets and upon the outside of the buildings only emeralds appear, from which circumstance the place is named the Emerald City of Oz. It has 9,654 buildings, in which lived 57,318 people up to the time my story opens. All the surrounding country, extending to the borders of the desert which enclosed it upon every side, was full of pretty and comfortable farmhouses, in which resided those inhabitants of Oz who preferred country to city life. Altogether, there were more than 500,000 people in the Land of Oz, although some of them, as you will soon learn, were not made of flesh and blood as we are, and every inhabitant of that favored country was happy and prosperous. No disease of any sort was ever known among the Ozites, and so no one ever died unless he met with an accident that prevented him from living. This happened very seldom indeed. There were no poor people in the Land of Oz, because there was no such thing as money, and all property of every sort belonged to the ruler. The people were her children, and she cared for them. Every person was given freely by his neighbors whatever he required for his use, which is as much as anyone may reasonably desire. Some tilled the lands and raised great crops of grain, which was divided equally among the entire population, so that all had enough. There were many tailors and dressmakers and shoemakers and the like, who made things that anyone who desired them might wear. Likewise, there were jewelers who made ornaments for the person which pleased and beautified the people, and these ornaments also were free to those who asked for them. Each man and woman, no matter what he or she produced for the good of the community, was supported by the neighbors with food and clothing and a house and furniture and ornaments and games. If by chance the supply ever ran short, more was taken from the great storehouses of the ruler, which were afterward filled up again when there was more of any article than the people needed. Everyone worked half the time and played half the time, and the people enjoyed the work as much as they did the play, because it is good to be occupied and to have something to do. There were no cruel overseers set to watch them, and no one to rebuke them or to find fault with them. So each one was proud to do all he could for his friends and neighbors, and was glad when they would accept the things he produced. you will know by what I have here told you that the land of Oz was a remarkable country. I do not suppose such an arrangement would be practical with us, but Dorothy assures me that it works finely with the Oz people. Oz being a fairy country, the people were of course fairy people, but that does not mean that all of them were very unlike the people of our own world. There were all sorts of queer characters among them, but not a single one who was evil, or who possessed a selfish or violent nature. They were peaceful, kind-hearted, loving, and merry, and every inhabitant adored the beautiful girl who ruled them, and delighted to obey her every command. In spite of all I have said in a general way, there were some parts of the Land of Oz not quite so pleasant as the farming country and the Emerald City, which was its center. Far away in the South Country there lived in the mountains a band of strange people called Hammerheads, because they had no arms and used their flat heads to pound anyone who came near them. Their necks were like rubber, so that they could shoot out their heads to quite a distance, and afterward draw them back again to their shoulders. The Hammerheads were called the Wild People, but never harmed any but those who disturbed them in their mountains where they lived. In some of the dense forests there lived great beasts of every sort, yet these were for the most part harmless and even sociable, and conversed agreeably with those who visited their haunts. The Kalidahs, beasts with bodies like bears and heads like tigers, had once been fierce and bloodthirsty, but even they were now nearly all tamed, although at times one or another of them would get cross and disagreeable. Not so tame were the fighting trees, which had a forest of their own. If anyone approached them, these curious trees would bend down their branches, twine them around the intruders, and hurl them away. But these unpleasant things existed only in a few remote parts of the Land of Oz. I suppose every country has some drawbacks, so even this almost perfect fairyland could not be quite perfect. Once there had been wicked witches in the land, too, but now these had all been destroyed, so, as I said, only peace and happiness reigned in Oz. For some time Ozma had ruled over this fair country, and never was ruler more popular or beloved. She is said to be the most beautiful girl the world has ever known, and her heart and mind are as lovely as her person. Dorothy Gale had several times visited the Emerald City and experienced adventures in the Land of Oz, so that she and Ozma had now become firm friends. The girl ruler had even made Dorothy a Princess of Oz, and had often implored her to come to Ozma's stately palace and live there always. But Dorothy had been loyal to her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, who had cared for her since she was a baby, and she had refused to leave them because she knew they would be lonely without her. However, Dorothy now realized that things were going to be different with her uncle and aunt from this time forth, so after giving the matter deep thought, she decided to ask Ozma to grant her a very great favor. A few seconds after she had made the secret signal in her little bedchamber, the Kansas girl was seated in a lovely room in Ozma's palace in the Emerald City of Oz. When the first loving kisses and embraces had been exchanged, the fair ruler inquired, "What is the matter, dear? I know something unpleasant has happened to you, for your face was very sober when I saw it in my magic picture, and whenever you signal me to transport you to this safe place where you are always welcome, I know you are in danger or in trouble." Dorothy sighed. "This time, Ozma, it isn't I," she replied. "But it's worse, I guess, for Uncle Henry and Aunt Em are in a heap of trouble, and there seems no way to get them out of it. Anyhow, not while they live in Kansas." "Tell me about it, Dorothy," said Ozma with ready sympathy. "Well, you see, Uncle Henry is poor, for the farm in Kansas doesn't mount to much, as farms go. So one day Uncle Henry borrowed some money and wrote a letter saying that if he didn't pay the money back, they could take his farm for pay. Course, he expected to pay by making money from the farm, but he just couldn't. And so they're going to take the farm, and Uncle Henry and Aunt Em won't have any place to live. They're pretty old to do much hard work, Ozma, so I'll have to work for them, unless... Ozma had been thoughtful during the story, but now she smiled and pressed her little friend's hand. "Unless what, dear?" she asked. Dorothy hesitated, because her request meant so much to them all. "Well," said she, "I'd like to live here in the Land of Oz, where you've often invited me to live, but I can't, you know, unless Uncle Henry and Aunt Em could live here too." "Of course not!" exclaimed the ruler of Oz, laughing gaily. "So in order to get you, little friend, we must invite your uncle and aunt to live in Oz also." "Oh, will you, Ozma?" cried Dorothy, clasping her chubby little hands eagerly. "Will you bring them here with the magic belt, and give them a nice little farm in the Munchkin country, or the Winkie country, or some other place?" "To be sure," answered Ozma, full of joy at the chance to please her little friend. "I have long been thinking of this very thing, Dorothy dear, and often I have had it in my mind to propose it to you. I am sure your uncle and aunt must be good and worthy people, or you would not love them so much. And for your friends, Princess, there is always room in the Land of Oz." Dorothy was delighted, yet not altogether surprised, for she had clung to the hope that Ozma would be kind enough to grant her request. When indeed had her powerful and faithful friend refused her anything? "But you must not call me Princess," she said, "for after this I shall live on the little farm with Uncle Henry and Aunt Em, and princesses ought not to live on farms." "Princess Dorothy will not," replied Ozma, with her sweet smile. "You are going to live in your own rooms in this palace, and be my constant companion." "But Uncle Henry—" began Dorothy. "Oh, he is old, and has worked enough in his lifetime," interrupted the girl Ruler. "So we must find a place for your uncle and aunt where they will be comfortable and happy, and need not work more than they care to. When shall we transport them here, Dorothy?" "I promised to go and see them again before they were turned out of the farmhouse," answered Dorothy, "so perhaps next Saturday." "But why wait so long?" asked Ozma. "And why make the journey back to Kansas again? Let us surprise them and bring them here without any warning." "I'm not sure that they believe in the Land of Oz," said Dorothy, "though I've told them 'bout it lots of times." "They'll believe when they see it," declared Ozma. "And if they are told they are to make a magical journey to see our fairyland, it may make them nervous. I think the best way will be to use the magic belt without warning them, and when they have arrived you can explain to them whatever they do not understand." "Perhaps that's best," decided Dorothy. "There isn't much use in their staying at the farm until they are put out, 'cause it's much nicer here." "Then tomorrow morning they shall come here," said Princess Ozma. "I will order Jellia Jamb, who is the palace housekeeper, to have rooms all prepared for them, and after breakfast we will get the magic belt, and by its aid transport your uncle and aunt to the Emerald City." "Thank you, Ozma," cried Dorothy, kissing her friend gratefully. "And now," Ozma proposed, "let us take a walk in the gardens before we dress for dinner. Come, Dorothy dear." Chapter 4 of the Emerald City of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 4. How the Nome King Planned Revenge. The reason most people are bad is because they do not try to be good. Now, the Nome King had never tried to be good, so he was very bad indeed. Having decided to conquer the Land of Oz and to destroy the Emerald City and enslave all its people, King Roquat the Red kept planning ways to do this dreadful thing, and the more he planned, the more he believed he would be able to accomplish it. About the time Dorothy went to Ozma, the Nome King called his chief steward to him and said, "Kaliko, I think I shall make you the general of my armies." "I think you won't," replied Kaliko positively. "Why not?" inquired the king, reaching for his scepter with the big sapphire. "Because I'm your chief steward and know nothing of warfare," said Kaliko, preparing to dodge if anything were thrown at him. "I manage all the affairs of your kingdom better than you could yourself, and you'll never find another steward as good as I am. But there are hundreds of nomes better fitted to command your army, and your generals get thrown away so often that I have no desire to be one of them." "Ah, there is some truth in your remarks, Kaliko," remarked the king, deciding not to throw the scepter. "Summon my army to assemble in the great cavern." Kaliko bowed and retired, and in a few minutes returned to say that the army was assembled. So the king went out upon a balcony that overlooked the great cavern, where 50,000 nomes, all armed with swords and pikes, stood marshaled in military array. When they were not required as soldiers, all these nomes were metal workers and miners, and they had hammered so much at the forges and dug so hard with pick and shovel that they had acquired great muscular strength. They were strangely formed creatures, rather round and not very tall. Their toes were curly and their ears broad and flat. In time of war, every nome left his forge or mine and became part of the great army of King Roquat. The soldiers wore rock-colored uniforms and were excellently drilled. The king looked upon this tremendous army, which stood silently arrayed before him, and a cruel smile curled the corners of his mouth, for he saw that his legions were very powerful. Then he addressed them from the balcony, saying, "I have thrown away General Blug because he did not please me. So I want another general to command this army. Who is next in command?" "I am," replied Colonel Crinkle, a dapper-looking gnome, as he stepped forward to salute his monarch. The king looked at him carefully and said, "I want you to march this army through an underground tunnel, which I am going to bore, to the Emerald City of Oz. When you get there, I want you to conquer the Oz people, destroy them in their city, and bring all their gold and silver and precious stones back to my cavern. Also, you are to recapture my magic belt and return it to me. Will you do this, General Crinkle?" "No, Your Majesty," replied the gnome, "for it can't be done." "Oh, indeed!" exclaimed the king. Then he turned to his servants and said, "Please take General Crinkle to the torture chamber. There you will kindly slice him into thin slices. Afterward you may feed him to the seven-headed dogs." "Anything to oblige Your Majesty," replied the servants politely, and led the condemned man away. When they had gone, the king addressed the army again. "Listen," said he. "The general who is to command my armies must promise to carry out my orders. If he fails, he will share the fate of poor Crinkle. Now then, who will volunteer to lead my hosts to the Emerald City?" For a time no one moved, and all were silent. Then an old gnome with white whiskers so long that they were tied around his waist to prevent their tripping him up, stepped out of the ranks and saluted the king. "I'd like to ask a few questions, Your Majesty," he said. "Go ahead," replied the king. "These Oz people are quite good, are they not?" "As good as apple pie," said the king. "And they are happy, I suppose?" continued the old gnome. "Happy as the day is long," said the king. "And contented and prosperous?" inquired the gnome. "Very much so," said the king. "Well, Your Majesty," remarked he of the white whiskers, "I think I should like to undertake the job, so I'll be your general. I hate good people. I detest happy people. I'm opposed to anyone who is contented and prosperous. That is why I am so fond of your Majesty. Make me your general, and I'll promise to conquer and destroy the Oz people. If I fail, I'm ready to be sliced thin and fed to the seven-headed dogs." Very good indeed. That's the way to talk," cried Roquat the Red, who was greatly pleased. "What is your name, General?" "I'm called Guff, your Majesty." "Well, Guff, come with me to my private cave, and we'll talk it over." Then he turned to the army. "Gnomes and soldiers," said he, "you are to obey the commands of General Guff until he becomes dog feed. Any man who fails to obey his new general will be promptly thrown away. You are now dismissed." Guff went to the king's private cave and sat down upon an amethyst chair and put his feet on the arm of the king's ruby throne. Then he lighted his pipe and threw the live coal he had taken from his pocket upon the king's left foot, and puffed the smoke into the king's eyes and made himself comfortable. For he was a wise old gnome, and he knew that the best way to get along with Roquat the Red was to show that he was not afraid of him. "I'm ready for the talk, your Majesty," he said. The king coughed and looked at his new general fiercely. "Do you not tremble to take such liberties with your monarch?" he asked. "Oh, no," replied Guff calmly, and he blew a wreath of smoke that curled around the king's nose and made him sneeze. "You want to conquer the Emerald City, and I'm the only gnome in all your dominions who can conquer it. So you will be very careful not to hurt me until I have carried out your wishes. After that—" "Well, what then?" inquired the king. "Then you will be so gratified that you won't care to hurt me," replied the general. "That is a very good argument," said Roquat. "But suppose you fail?" "Then it's the slicing machine." "I agree to that," announced Guff. "But if you do as I tell you, there will be no failure. The trouble with you, Roquat, is that you don't think carefully enough. I do. You would go ahead and march through your tunnel into Oz and get defeated and driven back. I won't. And the reason I won't is because when I march, I'll have all my plans made and a host of allies to assist my gnomes." "What do you mean by that?" asked the king. "I'll explain, King Roquat. You're going to attack a fairy country, and a mighty fairy country, too. They haven't much of an army in Oz, but the princess who rules them has a fairy wand, and the little girl Dorothy has your magic belt. And at the north of the Emerald City lives a clever sorceress called Glinda the Good, who commands the spirits of the air. Also, I have heard that there is a wonderful wizard in Ozma's palace, who is so skillful that people used to pay him money in America to see him perform. So, you see, it will be no easy thing to overcome all this magic." "We have 50,000 soldiers!" cried the king proudly. "Yes, but they are gnomes," remarked Guff, taking a silk handkerchief from the king's pocket and wiping his own pointed shoes with it. "Gnomes are immortals, but they are not strong on magic. When you lost your famous belt, the greater part of your own power was gone from you. Against Ozma, you and your gnomes would have no show at all." Roquat's eyes flashed angrily. "Then away with you to the slicing machine!" he cried. "Not yet," said the general, filling his pipe from the king's private tobacco pouch. "What do you propose to do?" asked the monarch. "I propose to obtain the power we need," answered Guff. "There are a good many evil creatures who have magic powers sufficient to destroy and conquer the Land of Oz. We will get them on our side, band them all together, and then take Ozma and her people by surprise. It's all very simple and easy when you know how. Alone, we should be helpless to injure the ruler of Oz, but with the aid of the evil powers we can summon, we shall easily succeed." King Roquat was delighted with this idea, for he realized how clever it was. "Surely, Guff, you are the greatest general I have ever had!" he exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with joy. You must go at once and make all arrangements with the evil powers to assist us, and meantime I'll begin to dig the tunnel." "I thought you'd agree with me, Roquant," replied the new general. "I'll start this very afternoon to visit the Chief of the Whimsies." End of chapter 4. Chapter 5 of The Emerald City of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5. How Dorothy Became a Princess. When the people of the Emerald City heard that Dorothy had returned to them, every one was eager to see her, for the little girl was a general favorite in the Land of Oz. From time to time, some of the folk from the great outside world had found their way into this fairyland, but all except one had been the companions of Dorothy, and had turned out to be very agreeable people. The exception I speak of was the wonderful Wizard of Oz, a sleight-of-hand performer from Omaha, who went up in a balloon and was carried by a current of air to the Emerald City. His queer and puzzling tricks made the people of Oz believe him to be a great wizard for a time, and he ruled over them until Dorothy arrived on her first visit, and showed the wizard to be a mere humbug. He was a gentle, kind-hearted little man, and Dorothy grew to like him afterward. When, after an absence, the wizard returned to the Land of Oz, Ozma received him graciously and gave him a home in a part of the palace. In addition to the wizard, two other personages from the outside world had been allowed to make their home in the Emerald City. The first was a quaint, shaggy man, whom Ozma had made the governor of the royal storehouses, and the second a yellow hen named Billina, who had a fine house in the gardens back of the palace, where she looked after a large family. Both of these had been old comrades of Dorothy, so you see the little girl was quite an important personage in Oz, and the people thought she had brought them good luck, and loved her next best to Ozma. During her several visits this little girl had been the means of destroying two wicked witches who oppressed the people, and she had discovered a live scarecrow who was now one of the most popular personages in all the fairy country. With the scarecrow's help she had rescued Nick Chopper, a Tin Woodman, who had rusted in a lonely forest, and the Tin Man was now the Emperor of the country of the Winkies, and much beloved because of his kind heart. No wonder the people thought Dorothy had brought them good luck. Yet, strange as it may seem, she had accomplished all these wonders not because she was a fairy or had any magical powers whatever, but because she was a simple, sweet, and true little girl who was honest to herself and to all whom she met. In this world in which we live, simplicity and kindness are the only magic wands that work wonders, and in the Land of Oz Dorothy found these same qualities had won for her the love and admiration of the people. Indeed, the little girl had made many warm friends in the fairy country, and the only real grief the Ozites had ever experienced was when Dorothy left them and returned to her Kansas home. Now she received a joyful welcome, although no one except Ozma knew at first that she had finally come to stay for good and all. That evening Dorothy had many callers, and among them were such important people as Tik-Tok, a machine man who thought and spoke and moved by clockwork; her old companion, the genial Shaggy Man; Jack Pumpkinhead, whose body was brushwood and whose head was a ripe pumpkin with a face carved upon it; the Cowardly Lion and the Hungry Tiger, two great beasts from the forest who served Princess Ozma; and Professor H.M. Wogglebug, T.E. This Wogglebug was a remarkable creature. He had once been a tiny little bug, crawling around in a schoolroom, but he was discovered and highly magnified, so that he could be seen more plainly, and while in this magnified condition he had escaped. He had always remained big, and he dressed like a dandy, and was so full of knowledge and information, which are distinct acquirements, that he had been made a professor and the head of the Royal College. Dorothy had a nice visit with these old friends, and also talked a long time with the Wizard, who was little and old and withered and dried up, but as merry and active as a child. Afterward she went to see Billina's fast-growing family of chicks. Toto, Dorothy's little black dog, also met with a cordial reception. Toto was an especial friend of the Shaggy Man, and he knew everyone else. Being the only dog in the Land of Oz, he was highly respected by the people, who believed animals entitled to every consideration if they behaved themselves properly. Dorothy had 4 lovely rooms in the palace, which were always reserved for her use and were called Dorothy's rooms. These consisted of a beautiful sitting room, a dressing room, a dainty bedchamber, and a big marble bathroom. And in these rooms were everything that heart could desire, placed there with loving thoughtfulness by Ozma for her little friend's use. The royal dressmakers had the little girl's measure, so they kept the closets in her dressing room filled with lovely dresses of every description and suitable for every occasion. No wonder Dorothy had refrained from bringing with her her old calico and gingham dresses. Here everything that was dear to a little girl's heart was supplied in profusion, and nothing so rich and beautiful could ever have been found in the biggest department stores in America. Of course Dorothy enjoyed all these luxuries, and the only reason she had heretofore preferred to live in Kansas was because her uncle and aunt loved her and needed her with them. Now, however, all was to be changed, and Dorothy was really more delighted to know that her dear relatives were to share in her good fortune and enjoy the delights of the Land of Oz than she was to possess such luxury for herself. Next morning, at Ozma's request, Dorothy dressed herself in a pretty sky blue gown of rich silk trimmed with real pearls. The buckles of her shoes were set with pearls, too, and more of these priceless gems were on a lovely coronet which she wore upon her forehead. "For," said her friend Ozma, "from this time forth, my dear, you must assume your rightful rank as a Princess of Oz, and being my chosen companion, you must dress in a way befitting the dignity of your position." Dorothy agreed to this, although she knew that neither gowns nor jewels could make her anything else than the simple, unaffected little girl she had always been. As soon as they had breakfasted, the girls eating together in Ozma's pretty boudoir, the ruler of Oz said: "Now, dear friend, we will use the magic belt to transport your uncle and aunt from Kansas to the Emerald City. But I think it would be fitting, in receiving such distinguished guests, for us to sit in my throne room." "Oh, they're not very distinguished, Ozma," said Dorothy. "They're just plain people, like me." "Being your friends and relatives, Princess Dorothy, they are certainly distinguished," replied the ruler with a smile. "They won't hardly know what to make of all your splendid furniture and things," protested Dorothy, gravely. "It may scare 'em to see your grand throne room, and perhaps we'd better go into the back yard, Ozma, where the cabbages grow and the chickens are playing. Then it would seem more natural to Uncle Henry and Aunt Em." "No, they shall first see me in my throne room," replied Ozma decidedly, and when she spoke in that tone Dorothy knew it was not wise to oppose her, for Ozma was accustomed to having her own way. So together they went to the throne room, an immense domed chamber in the center of the palace. Here stood the royal throne, made of solid gold and encrusted with enough precious stones to stock a dozen jewelry stores in our country. Ozma, who was wearing the magic belt, seated herself in her throne, and Dorothy sat at her feet. In the room were assembled many ladies and gentlemen of the court, clothed in rich apparel and wearing fine jewelry. Two immense animals squatted, one on each side of the throne, the Cowardly Lion and the Hungry Tiger. In a balcony high up in the dome an orchestra played sweet music, and beneath the dome two electric fountains sent sprays of colored, perfumed water shooting up nearly as high as the arched ceiling. "Are you ready, Dorothy?" asked the ruler. "I am," replied Dorothy, "but I don't know whether Aunt Em and Uncle Henry are ready." "That won't matter," declared Ozma. "The old life can have very little interest to them, and the sooner they begin the new life here the happier they will be. Here they come, my dear." As she spoke, there before the throne appeared Uncle Henry and Aunt Em, who for a moment stood motionless, glaring with white and startled faces at the scene that confronted them. If the ladies and gentlemen present had not been so polite, I am sure they would have laughed at the two strangers. Aunt Em had her calico dress skirt tucked up, and she wore a faded blue checked apron. Her hair was rather straggly, and she had on a pair of Uncle Henry's old slippers. In one hand she held a dish towel, and in the other a cracked earthenware plate, which she had been engaged in wiping when so suddenly transported to the Land of Oz. Uncle Henry, when the summons came, had been out in the barn "doin' chores." He wore a ragged and much soiled straw hat, a checked shirt without any collar, and blue overalls tucked into the tops of his old cowhide boots. "By gum!" gasped Uncle Henry, looking around as if bewildered. "Well, I swan!" gurgled Aunt Em in a hoarse, frightened voice. Then her eyes fell upon Dorothy, and she said, "Don't that look like our little girl, our Dorothy, Henry?" "Hi there! Look out, Em!" exclaimed the old man, as Aunt Em advanced a step. "Take care of the wild beasties, or you're a goner." But now Dorothy sprang forward and embraced and kissed her aunt and uncle affectionately, afterward taking their hands in her own. "Don't be afraid," she said to them. "You are now in the Land of Oz, where you are to live always and be comfortable and happy. You'll never have to worry over anything again, 'cause there won't be anything to worry about. And you owe it all to the kindness of my friend, Princess Ozma." Here she led them before the throne and continued, "Your Highness, this is Uncle Henry, and this is Aunt Em. They want to thank you for bringing them here from Kansas." Aunt Em tried to slick her hair, and she hid the dish towel and dish under her apron while she bowed to the lovely Ozma. Uncle Henry took off his straw hat and held it awkwardly in his hands. But the ruler of Oz rose and came from her throne to greet her newly arrived guests, and she smiled as sweetly upon them as if they had been a king and a queen. "You are very welcome here, where I have brought you for Princess Dorothy's sake," she said graciously, "and I hope you will be quite happy in your new home." Then she turned to her courtiers, who were silently and gravely regarding the scene, and added, "I present to my people our Princess Dorothy's beloved Uncle Henry and Aunt Em, who will hereafter be subjects of our kingdom. It will please me to have you show them every kindness and honor in your power, and to join me in making them happy and contented." Hearing this, all those assembled bowed low and respectfully to the old farmer and his wife, who bobbed their own heads in return. "And now," said Ozma to them, "Dorothy will show you the rooms prepared for you. I hope you will like them, and shall expect you to join me at luncheon." So Dorothy led her relatives away, and as soon as they were out of the throne room and alone in the corridor, Aunt Em squeezed Dorothy's hand and said, "Child, child, how in the world did we ever get here so quick? And is it all real? And are we to stay here, as she says? And what does it all mean, anyhow?" Dorothy laughed. "Why didn't you tell us what you were going to do?" inquired Uncle Henry, reproachfully. "If I'd known about it, I'd have put on my Sunday clothes." "I'll 'splain everything as soon as we get to your rooms," promised Dorothy. "You're in great luck, Uncle Henry and Aunt Em, and so am I, and oh, I'm so happy to have you here at last." As he walked by the little girl's side, Uncle Henry stroked his whiskers thoughtfully. "'Pears to me, Dorothy, we won't make bang-up fairies," he remarked. "And my back hair looks like a fright," wailed Aunt Em. "Never mind," returned the little girl, reassuringly. "You won't have anything to do now but to look pretty, Aunt Em, and Uncle Henry won't have to work till his back aches, that's certain." "Sure?" they asked, wonderingly, and in the same breath. "'Course I'm sure," said Dorothy. "You're in Fairyland of Oz now, and what's more, you belong to it." End of chapter 5. Chapter 6 of The Emerald City of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 6. How Guph Visited the Whimsies. The new general of the Nome King's army knew perfectly well that to fail in his plans meant death for him, yet he was not at all anxious or worried. He hated everyone who was good and longed to make all who were happy unhappy. Therefore he had accepted this dangerous position as general quite willingly, feeling sure in his evil mind that he would be able to do a lot of mischief and finally conquer the Land of Oz. Yet Guph determined to be careful and to lay his plans well so as not to fail. He argued that only careless people fail in what they attempt to do. The mountains underneath which the Nome King's extensive caverns were located lay grouped just north of the Land of Ev, which lay directly across the deadly desert to the east of the Land of Oz. As the mountains were also on the edge of the desert, the Nome King found that he had only to tunnel underneath the desert to reach Ozma's dominions. He did not wish his armies to appear above ground in the country of the Winkies, which was the part of the Land of Oz nearest to King Roquat's own country, as then the people would give the alarm and enable Ozma to fortify the Emerald City and assemble an army. He wanted to take all the Oz people by surprise, so he decided to run the tunnel clear through to the Emerald City, where he and his hosts would break through the ground without warning and conquer the people before they had time to defend themselves. Roquat the Red began work at once upon his tunnel, setting 1,000 miners at the task and building it high and broad enough for his armies to march through it with ease. The Nomes were used to making tunnels, as all the kingdom in which they lived was underground, so they made rapid progress. While this work was going on, General Guph started out alone to visit the chief of the Whimsies. These Whimsies were curious people who lived in a retired country of their own. They had large, strong bodies, but heads so small that they were no bigger than doorknobs. Of course, such tiny heads could not contain any great amount of brains, and the Whimsies were so ashamed of their personal appearance and lack of common sense that they wore big heads made of pasteboard, which they fastened over their own little heads. On these pasteboard heads they sewed sheep's wool for hair, and the wool was colored many tints, pink, green, and lavender being the favorite colors. The faces of these false heads were painted in many ridiculous ways, according to the whims of the owners, and these big, burly creatures looked so whimsical and absurd in their queer masks that they were called Whimsies. They foolishly imagined that no one would suspect the little heads that were inside the imitation ones, not knowing that it is folly to try to appear otherwise than as nature has made us. The chief of the Whimsies had as little wisdom as the others, and had been chosen chief merely because none among them was any wiser or more capable of ruling. The Whimsies were evil spirits and could not be killed. They were hated and feared by everyone, and were known as terrible fighters because they were so strong and muscular and had not sense enough to know when they were defeated. General Guph thought the Whimsies would be a great help to the Nomes in the conquest of Oz, for under his leadership they could be induced to fight as long as they could stand up. So he traveled to their country and asked to see the chief, who lived in a house that had a picture of his grotesque false head painted over the doorway. The chief's false head had blue hair, a turned-up nose, and a mouth that stretched half across the face. Big green eyes had been painted upon it, but in the center of the chin were two small holes made in the pasteboard, so that the chief could see through them with his own tiny eyes, for when the big head was fastened upon his shoulders, the eyes in his own natural head were on a level with the false chin. Said General Gufft to the Chief of the Whimsies, "We gnomes are going to conquer the land of Oz and capture our king's magic belt, which the Oz people stole from him. Then we are going to plunder and destroy the whole country, and we want the Whimsies to help us." "Will there be any fighting?" asked the chief. "Plenty," replied Gufft. That must have pleased the chief, for he got up and danced around the room 3 times. Then he seated himself again, adjusted his false head, and said, "We have no quarrel with Ozma of Oz." "But you Whimsies love to fight, and here is a splendid chance to do so," urged Gufft. "Wait till I sing a song," said the chief. Then he lay back in his chair and sang a foolish song that did not seem to the general to mean anything, although he listened carefully. When he had finished, the Chief Whimsy looked at him through the holes in his chin and asked, "What reward will you give us if we help you?" The general was prepared for this question, for he had been thinking the matter over on his journey. People often do a good deed without hope of reward, but for an evil deed they always demand payment. "When we get our magic belt," he made reply, "our king, Roquat the Red, will use its power to give every Whimsy a natural head as big and fine as the false head he now wears. Then you will no longer be ashamed because your big strong bodies have such teensy-weensy heads." "Oh, will you do that?" asked the chief eagerly. "We surely will," promised the general. "I'll talk to my people," said the chief. So he called a meeting of all the Whimsies and told them of the offer made by the nomes. The creatures were delighted with the bargain, and at once agreed to fight for the Nome King and help him to conquer Oz. One Whimsy alone seemed to have a glimmer of sense, for he asked, "Suppose we fail to capture the magic belt? What will happen then? And what good will all our fighting do?" But they threw him into the river for asking foolish questions, and laughed when the water ruined his pasteboard head before he could swim out again. So the compact was made, and General Gufft was delighted with his success in gaining such powerful allies. But there were other people, too, just as important as the Whimsies, whom the clever old gnome had determined to win to his side. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7 of The Emerald City of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 7. How Aunt Em Conquered the Lion. "These are your rooms," said Dorothy, opening a door. Aunt Em drew back at the sight of the splendid furniture and draperies. "Ain't there any place to wipe my feet?" she asked. "You will soon change your slippers for new shoes," replied Dorothy. "Don't be afraid, Aunt Em. Here is where you are to live, so walk right in and make yourself at home." Aunt Em advanced hesitatingly. "It beats Topeka Hotel," she cried admiringly. "But this place is too grand for us, child. Can't we have some back room in the attic that's more'n our class?" "No," said Dorothy. "You've got to live here 'cause Ozma says so, and all the rooms in this palace are just as fine as these, and some are better. It won't do any good to fuss, Aunt Em. You've got to be swell and high-toned in the Land of Oz, whether you want to or not, so you may as well make up your mind to it." "It's hard luck," replied her aunt, looking around with an awed expression, "but folks can get used to anything if they try. Eh, Henry?" "Why, as to that," said Uncle Henry, slowly, I believe in taking what's provided us and asking no questions. I've traveled some, in my time, and you hain't, and that makes a difference between us." Then Dorothy showed them through the rooms. The first was a handsome sitting room, with windows opening upon the rose gardens. Then came separate bedrooms for Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, with a fine bathroom between them. Aunt Em had a pretty dressing room besides, and Dorothy opened the closets and showed several exquisite costumes that had been provided for her aunt by the royal dressmakers, who had worked all night to get them ready. Everything that Aunt Em could possibly need was in the drawers and closets, and her dressing table was covered with engraved gold toilet articles. Uncle Henry had 9 suits of clothes, cut in the popular Munchkin fashion, with knee breeches, silk stockings, and low shoes with jeweled buckles. The hats to match these costumes had pointed tops and wide brims, with small gold bells around the edges. His shirts were of fine linen with frilled bosoms, and his vests were richly embroidered with colored silks. Uncle Henry decided that he would first take a bath and then dress himself in a blue satin suit that had caught his fancy. He accepted his good fortune with calm composure, and refused to have a servant to assist him. But Aunt Em was all of a flutter, as she said, and it took Dorothy and Jellia Jam, the housekeeper, and 2 maids a long time to dress her and do up her hair and get her rigged like a popinjay, as she quaintly expressed it. She wanted to stop and admire everything that caught her eye, and she sighed continually and declared that such finery was too good for an old country woman, and that she never thought she would have to put on airs at her time of life. Finally she was dressed, and when she went into the sitting room there was Uncle Henry in his blue satin, walking gravely up and down the room. He had trimmed his beard and mustache, and looked very dignified and respectable. "Tell me, Dorothy," he said, "do all men here wear duds like these?" "Yes," she replied, "all 'cept the Scarecrow and the Shaggy Man, and of course the Tin Woodman and Tik Tok, who are made of metal. You'll find all the men at Ozma's court dressed just as you are, only perhaps a little finer." "Henry, you look like a play actor," announced Aunt Em, looking at her husband critically. "And you, Em, look more highfalutin than a peacock," he replied. "I guess you're right," she said regretfully, "but we're helpless victims of high-toned royalty." Dorothy was much amused. "Come with me," she said, "and I'll show you round the palace." She took them through the beautiful rooms and introduced them to all the people they chanced to meet. Also she showed them her own pretty rooms, which were not far from their own. "So it's all true," said Aunt Em, wide-eyed with amazement, "and what Dorothy told us of this fairy country was plain facts instead of dreams. But where are all the strange creatures you used to know here?" "Yes, where's the Scarecrow?" inquired Uncle Henry. "Why, he's just now away on a visit to the Tin Woodman, who is Emperor of the Winkie Country," answered the little girl. "You'll see him when he comes back, and you're sure to like him." "And where's the wonderful Wizard?" asked Aunt Em. "You'll see him at Ozma's luncheon, for he lives here in this palace," was the reply. "And Jack Pumpkinhead?" "Oh, he lives a little way out of town, in his own pumpkin field. We'll go there sometime and see him, and we'll call on Professor Wogglebug, too. The Shaggy Man will be at the luncheon, I guess, and Tik Tok. And now I'll take you out to see Billina, who has a house of her own." So they went into the backyard, and after walking along winding paths some distance through the beautiful gardens, they came to an attractive little house where the yellow hen sat on the front porch sunning herself. "Good morning, my dear mistress," called Billina, fluttering down to meet them. "I was expecting you to call, for I heard you had come back and brought your uncle and aunt with you." "We're here for good and all this time, Billina," cried Dorothy joyfully. "Uncle Henry and Aunt Em belong to Oz now as much as I do." "Then they are very lucky people,"
declared Billina, "for there couldn't be a nicer place to live. But come, my dear, I must show you all my Dorothys. 9 are living and have grown up to be very respectable hens, but one took cold at Ozma's birthday party and died of the pip, and the other 2 turned out to be horrid roosters, so I had to change their names from Dorothy to Daniel. They all had the letter D engraved upon their gold lockets, you remember, with your picture inside, and D stands for Daniel as well as for Dorothy."
Do you call both the roosters Daniel?
Asked Uncle Henry. "Yes, indeed. I've 9 Dorothys and 2 Daniels, and the 9 Dorothys have 86 sons and daughters, and over 300 grandchildren," said Billina proudly. "What names do you give 'em all, dear?" inquired the little girl. "Oh, they are all Dorothys and Daniels, some being juniors and some double juniors. Dorothy and Daniel are 2 good names, and I see no object in hunting for others," declared the yellow hen. "But just think, Dorothy, what a big chicken family we've grown to be, and our numbers increase nearly every day. Ozma doesn't know what to do with all the eggs we lay, and we are never eaten or harmed in any way, as chickens are in your country. They give us everything to make us contented and happy, and I, my dear, am the acknowledged queen and governor of every chicken in Oz, because I'm the eldest and started the whole colony."
You ought to be very proud, ma'am, said Uncle Henry, who was astonished to hear a hen talk so sensibly.
"Oh, I am," she replied. "I've the loveliest pearl necklace you ever saw. Come in the house and I'll show it to you. And I've 9 leg bracelets and a diamond pin for each wing, but I only wear them on state occasions."
They followed the yellow hen into the house, which Aunt Em declared was neat as a pin. They could not sit down because all Billina's chairs were roosting poles made of silver, so they had to stand while the hen fussily showed them her treasures. Then they had to go into the back rooms occupied by Billina's 9 Dorothys and 2 Daniels, who were all plump yellow chickens, and greeted the visitors very politely. It was easy to see that they were well bred and that Billina had looked after their education. In the yards were all the children and grandchildren of these 11 elders, and they were of all sizes, from well-grown hens to tiny chickens just out of the shell. About 50 fluffy yellow youngsters were at school, being taught good manners and good grammar by a young hen who wore spectacles. They sang in chorus a patriotic song of the Land of Oz, in honor of their visitors, and Aunt Em was much impressed by these talking chickens. Dorothy wanted to stay and play with the young chickens for a while, but Uncle Henry and Aunt Em had not seen the palace grounds and gardens yet, and were eager to get better acquainted with the marvelous and delightful land in which they were to live. "I'll stay here and you can go for a walk," said Dorothy. "You'll be perfectly safe anywhere, and may do whatever you want to. When you get tired, go back to the palace and find your rooms, and I'll come to you before luncheon is ready." So Uncle Henry and Aunt Em started out alone to explore the grounds, and Dorothy knew that they couldn't get lost, because all the palace grounds were enclosed by a high wall of green marble set with emeralds. It was a rare treat to these simple folk, who had lived in the country all their lives and known little enjoyment of any sort, to wear beautiful clothes and live in a palace and be treated with respect and consideration by all around them. They were very happy indeed as they strolled up the shady walks and looked upon the gorgeous flowers and shrubs, feeling that their new home was more beautiful than any tongue could describe. Suddenly, as they turned a corner and walked through a gap in a high hedge, they came face to face with an enormous lion, which crouched upon the green lawn and seemed surprised by their appearance. They stopped short, Uncle Henry trembling with horror, and Aunt Em too terrified to scream. Next moment the poor woman clasped her husband around the neck and cried, "Save me, Henry, save me!" "Can't even save myself, Em,"
he returned in a husky voice,
"for the animal looks as if he could eat both of us and lick its chops for more. If I only had a gun.
Haven't you, Henry? Haven't you? She asked anxiously.
Ne'er a gun, Em. So let's die as brave and graceful as we can. I knew our luck couldn't last.
I won't die. I won't be eaten by a lion, wailed Aunt Em, glaring upon the huge beast. Then a thought struck her, and she whispered, Henry, I've heard as savage beasties can be conquered by the human eye. I'll eye that lion out of countenance and save our lives.
Try it, Em, he returned, also in a whisper. Look at him as you do at me when I'm late to dinner. Aunt Em turned upon the lion a determined countenance and a wild, dilated eye. She glared at the immense beast steadily, and the lion, who had been quietly blinking at them, began to appear uneasy and disturbed. "Is anything the matter, ma'am?" he asked in a mild voice. At this speech from the terrible beast, Aunt Em and Uncle Henry both were startled, and then Uncle Henry remembered that this must be the lion they had seen in Ozma's throne room. "Hold on, Em!" he exclaimed. "Quit the eagle-eye conquest and take courage. I guess this is the same cowardly lion Dorothy has told us about." "Oh, is it?" she cried, much relieved. "When he spoke I got the idea, and when he looked so shamed-like I was sure of it," Uncle Henry continued. Aunt Em regarded the animal with new interest. "Are you the Cowardly Lion?" she inquired. "Are you Dorothy's friend?" "Yes'm," answered the Lion meekly. "Dorothy and I are old chums, and are very fond of each other. I'm the King of Beasts, you know, and the Hungry Tiger and I serve Princess Ozma as her bodyguards." "To be sure," said Aunt Em, nodding. "But the King of Beasts shouldn't be cowardly." "I've heard that said before," remarked the Lion, yawning till he showed two great rows of sharp white teeth. "But that does not keep me from being frightened whenever I go into battle." "What do you do? Run?" asked Uncle Henry. "No, that would be foolish, for the enemy would run after me," declared the Lion. "So I tremble with fear and pitch in as hard as I can, and so far I have always won my fight." "Ah, I begin to understand," said Uncle Henry. "Were you scared when I looked at you just now?" inquired Aunt Em. "Terribly scared, madam," answered the Lion. "For at first I thought you were going to have a fit. Then I noticed you were trying to overcome me by the power of your eye, and your glance was so fierce and penetrating that I shook with fear." This greatly pleased the lady, and she said quite cheerfully, "Well, I won't hurt you, so don't be scared any more. I just wanted to see what the human eye was good for." "The human eye is a fearful weapon," remarked the Lion, scratching his nose softly with his paw to hide a smile. "Had I not known you were Dorothy's friends, I might have torn you both into shreds in order to escape your terrible gaze." Aunt Em shuddered at hearing this, and Uncle Henry said hastily, "I'm glad you knew us. Good morning, Mr. Lion. We'll hope to see you again by and by, some time in the future." "Good morning," replied the Lion, squatting down upon the lawn again. "You are likely to see a good deal of me if you live in the Land of Oz." End of chapter 7. Chapter 8 of the Emerald City of Oz.
Okay, so today's the day for the great experiment. So we will see how this goes. Angie is so dandy, getting ready for her trip. It's 5 something when the night market opens up. So it's 4:40 now. It's either 5 or 5:30. I can't remember. Apparently it's 5. I will go as soon as I get down to floor 20. I'm working on that quest. And yeah, so you're stuffing your face? Face stuffing. There it is. 18. One more floor. And yeah, well, I did blast a couple. My goodness, where's the? Don't tell me I missed it. No, I didn't. 'Cause I have missed the. What the hell? I have missed the ladders before. There it is, all the way. Had to go all the way. Leave it. Let's see. Go to town. Yeah, I do like that menu. I think that's gonna be in the in my mod list as a permanent fixture. Let's see. We'll put in one at a time. And I said I was going to, oops. I said I was going to turn it up, so I'm going to turn it up. Last fishing. Okay. It's 140. So let's get it up to 250. Save and close. Okay. Since it's in a space that going to be in a space that's like it won't have a lot going on, so hopefully it will be home cooked burgers. Ooh, nice. It's going to be a small space. It's not like being out in the open, so it should be okay in theory if there's just one. Just excited. Where are the people that I am not friends with? Because that's really who I want to talk to. Not the people that I'm already friends with. And I've got all the paintings already, so I'm not going to buy any more. And always check the lady in case she has some of the few things that I can't produce myself, like the no-neem wine and the no-neem pickles and the no-neem jelly. And we'll do a stack. Oh, okay, let's see. One. One. Got myself twisted into weird things. To buy a stack of everything, you have to hold Control Shift and 1, and that's in the base game as well. So and then you hit Shift to buy a 5 at a time, and hold Control Shift to buy 25 at a time. So yeah. Okay. Cool coleslaw. Okay. Okay. I'm getting in to the submarine. I'm gonna bring my tractor. uh, this should be interesting. This should be interesting. Woohoo! Okay. Oops, wrong screen. Okay. Are we ready? Are we ready? What time is it? 1:35. Mark is when the event happens. So okay. One or three, two, one, blast off. 250. Okay, I have to do that again and actually turn on the turn on the sound, I think. Let's see. Uh, desktop audio. Um, that should do it. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Blast off again! Yeesh. That's brilliant. That's wonderful. Okay. we'll park the we'll park the tractor because I need to get like gold quality stuff too. So I'll, I'll end up cutting clipping that and um, sharing it by itself. That was pretty fun. uh, okay, since you asked, since you asked, what me? I'm not a goober. Maybe a little fib. Maybe I'm a big goober. I'll be fishing now. Eat it. Okay. Maybe just a little goober. Oh, I guess it helps that because I can do this tomorrow night too. So this isn't the only night that I can do this. I can do it tomorrow night too. So this, because the night market's 3 nights in a row. 3, this many. Okay, I will play the book. Um, Mute that. Okay, apparently I hit the wrong button. Let's have a look. Nadine plays. Oops, no. Okay, we'll have to go into. I hit the wrong button and I stopped it instead of pausing it. Oops. So let's see. Media. Audiobooks. LibriVox. Wizard of Oz. Number 6. And part 1. It's technically the group 1. And I believe Aunt M conquers the lion. So it's number 8 is next. Yep. Wouldn't be the first time someone called me that. Okay, so we gotta go to number 8.
Chapter 1 of Chapter ch- chap, Chapter 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 7 Chapter 8 of the Emerald City of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 8. How the Grand Gollypoot Joined the Gnomes. After leaving the Whimsies, Guff continued on his journey and penetrated far into the northwest. He wanted to get to the country of the Growlywogs, and in order to do that, he must cross the Ripple Land, which was a hard thing to do, for the Ripple Land was a succession of hills and valleys, all very steep and rocky, and they changed places constantly by rippling. While Guff was climbing a hill, it sank down under him and became a valley, and while he was descending into a valley, it rose up and carried him to the top of a hill. This was very perplexing to a traveler, and a stranger might have thought he could never cross the Ripple Land at all. But Guff knew that if he kept steadily on, he would get to the end at last, so he paid no attention to the changing hills and valleys, and plodded along as calmly as if walking upon the level ground. The result of this wise persistence was that the general finally reached firmer soil and, after penetrating a dense forest, came to the dominion of the Growlywogs. No sooner had he crossed the border of this domain when 2 guards seized him and carried him before the Grand Gollypoot of the Growlywogs, who scowled upon him ferociously and asked him why he dared intrude upon his territory. "I'm the Lord High General of the Invincible Army of the Gnomes, and my name is Guff," was the reply. "All the world trembles when that name is mentioned." The Growlywogs gave a shout of jeering laughter at this, and one of them caught the gnome in his strong arms and tossed him high into the air. Guff was considerably shaken when he fell upon the hard ground, but he appeared to take no notice of the impertinence, and composed himself to speak again to the Grand Gollypoot. "My master, King Roquat the Red, has sent me here to confer with you. He wishes your assistance to conquer the land of Oz." Here the general paused, and the Grand Gollypoot scowled upon him more terribly than ever, and said, "Go on." The voice of the Grand Gollypoot was partly a roar and partly a growl. He mumbled his words badly, and Guff had to listen carefully in order to understand him. These Growlywogs were certainly remarkable creatures. They were of gigantic size, yet were all bone and skin and muscle, there being no meat or fat upon their bodies at all. Their powerful muscles lay just underneath their skins like bunches of tough rope, and the weakest Growlywog was so strong that he could pick up an elephant and toss it 7 miles away. It seems unfortunate that strong people are usually so disagreeable and overbearing that no one cares for them. In fact, to be different from your fellow creatures is always a misfortune. The Growlywogs knew that they were disliked and avoided by everyone, so they had become surly and unsociable even among themselves. Guff knew that they hated all people, including the gnomes, but he hoped to win them over nevertheless, and knew that if he succeeded they would afford him very powerful assistance. "The Land of Oz is ruled by a namby-pamby girl who is disgustingly kind and good," he continued. "Her people are all happy and contented, and have no care or worries whatever." "Go on," growled the Grand Gollypoot. "Once the Nome King enslaved the royal family of Ev, another goody-goody lot that we detest," said the general. "But Ozma interfered, although it was none of her business, and marched her army against us. With her was a Kansas girl named Dorothy,
and a yellow hen, and they marched directly into the Nome King's cavern. There they liberated our slaves from Ev, and stole King Roquat's magic belt, which they carried away with them. So now our king is making a tunnel under the deadly desert, so we can march through it to the Emerald City. When we get there, we mean to conquer and destroy all the land, and recapture the magic belt." Again he paused, and again the Grand Gallipoot growled, "Go on." Guff tried to think what to say next, and a happy thought soon occurred to him. "We want you to help us in this conquest," he announced, "for we need the mighty aid of the Growlywogs in order to make sure that we shall not be defeated. You are the strongest people in all the world, and you hate good and happy creatures as much as we gnomes do. I am sure it will be a real pleasure to you to tear down the beautiful Emerald City, and in return for your valuable assistance, we will allow you to bring back to your country 10,000 people of Oz to be your slaves." 20,000, growled the Grand Gallipoot. "All right, we promise you 20,000, agreed the general. The Gallipoot made a signal, and at once his attendants picked up General Guff and carried him away to a prison, where the jailer amused himself by sticking pins in the round, fat body of the old gnome to see him jump and hear him yell. But while this was going on, the Grand Gallipoot was talking with his counselors, who were the most important officials of the Growlywogs. When he had stated to them the proposition of the Nome King, he said, "My advice is to offer to help them. Then, when we have conquered the land of Oz, we will take not only our 20,000 prisoners, but all the gold and jewels we want." "Let us take the magic belt, too," suggested one counselor. "And rob the Nome King and make him our slave," said another. "That is a good idea," declared the Grand Gallipoot. "I'd like King Roquat for my own slave. He could black my boots and bring me my porridge every morning while I am in bed." "There is a famous scarecrow in Oz. I'll take him for my slave," said a counselor. "I'll take Tik-Tok, the machine man," said another. "Give me the Tin Woodman," said a third. They went on for some time, dividing up the people and the treasure of Oz in advance of the conquest. For they had no doubt at all that they would be able to destroy Ozma's domain. Were they not the strongest people in all the world? "The deadly desert has kept us out of Oz before," remarked the Grand Gallipoot. "But now that the Nome King is building a tunnel, we shall get into the Emerald City very easily. So let us send the little fat general back to his king, with our promise to assist him. We will not say that we intend to conquer the gnomes after we have conquered Oz, but we will do so just the same." This plan being agreed upon, they all went home to dinner, leaving General Guff still in prison. The gnome had no idea that he had succeeded in his mission, for finding himself in prison, he feared the Growlywogs intended to put him to death. By this time the jailer had tired of sticking pins in the general, and was amusing himself by carefully pulling the gnome's whiskers out by the roots, one at a time. This enjoyment was interrupted by the Grand Gallipoot sending for the prisoner. "Wait a few hours," begged the jailer. "I haven't pulled out a quarter of his whiskers yet." "If you keep the Grand Gallipoot waiting, he'll break your back," declared the messenger. "Perhaps you're right," sighed the jailer. "Take the prisoner away if you will, but I advise you to kick him at every step he takes. It will be good fun, for he is as soft as a ripe peach." So Guff was led away to the royal castle, where the Grand Gallipoot told him that the Growlywogs had decided to assist the gnomes in conquering the land of Oz.
"Whenever you are ready," he added, "send me word, and I will march with 18,000 of my most powerful warriors to your aid." Guff was so delighted that he forgot all the smarting caused by the pins and the pulling of the whiskers. He did not even complain of the treatment he had received, but thanked the Grand Gallipoot and hurried away upon his journey. He had now secured the assistance of the Whimsies and the Growlywogs, but his success made him long for still more allies. His own life depended upon his conquering Oz, and he said to himself, "I'll take no chances. I'll be certain of success. Then, when Oz is destroyed, perhaps I shall be a greater man than old Roquat, and I can throw him away and be king of the gnomes myself. Why not? Whimsies are stronger than the gnomes, and they also are my friends. There are some people still stronger than the Growlywogs, and if I can but induce them to aid me, I shall have nothing more to fear." End of chapter 8. Chapter 9 of The Emerald City of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 9. How the Woggle-Bug Taught Athletics. It did not take Dorothy long to establish herself in her new home, for she knew the people and the manners and customs of the Emerald City just as well as she knew the old Kansas farm. But Uncle Henry and Aunt Em had some trouble in getting used to the finery and pomp and ceremony of Ozma's place, and felt uneasy because they were obliged to be "dressed up" all the time. Yet every one was very courteous and kind to them, and endeavored to make them happy. Ozma, especially, made much of Dorothy's relatives, for her little friend's sake, and she well knew that the awkwardness and strangeness of their new mode of life would all wear off in time. The old people were chiefly troubled by the fact that there was no work for them to do. "Every day is like Sunday now," declared Aunt Em solemnly, "and I can't say I like it. If they'd only let me do up the dishes after meals, or even sweep and dust my own rooms, I'd be a deal happier. Henry don't know what to do with himself, either, and once when he stole out and fed the chickens, Billina scolded him for letting him eat between meals. I never knew before what a hardship it is to be rich and have everything you want." These complaints began to worry Dorothy, so she had a long talk with Ozma upon the subject. "I see I must find them something to do," said the girlish ruler of Oz, seriously. "I've been watching your uncle and aunt, and I believe that they will be more contented if occupied with some light tasks. While I am considering the matter, Dorothy, you might make a trip with them through the Land of Oz, visiting some of the odd corners and introducing your relatives to some of our curious people." "Oh, that would be fine!" exclaimed Dorothy eagerly. "I will give you an escort befitting your rank as a princess," continued Ozma, "and you may go to some of the places you have not yet visited yourself, as well as some others that you know. I will mark out a plan of the trip for you, and have everything in readiness for you to start tomorrow morning. Take your time, dear, and be gone as long as you wish. By the time you return I shall have found some occupation for Uncle Henry and Aunt Em that will keep them from being restless and dissatisfied." Dorothy thanked her good friend and kissed the lovely ruler gratefully. Then she ran to tell the joyful news to her uncle and aunt. Next morning after breakfast everything was found ready for their departure. The escort included Omby Amby, the Captain General of Ozma's army, which consisted merely of 27 officers, besides the Captain General. Once Omby Amby had been a private soldier, the only private in the army, but as there was never any fighting to do, Ozma saw no need of a private, so she made Omby Amby the highest officer of them all. He was very tall and slim, and wore a gay uniform and a fierce mustache. Yet the mustache was the only fierce thing about Omby Amby, whose nature was as gentle as that of a child. The wonderful Wizard had asked to join the party, and with him came his friend the Shaggy Man,
who was shaggy but not ragged, being dressed in fine silks with satin shags and bobtails. The Shaggy Man had shaggy whiskers and hair, but a sweet disposition and a soft, pleasant voice. There was an open wagon with 3 seats for the passengers, and the wagon was drawn by the famous wooden sawhorse, which had once been brought to life by Ozma by means of a magic powder. The Sawhorse wore wooden shoes to keep his wooden legs from wearing away, and he was strong and swift. As this curious creature was Ozma's own favorite steed, and very popular with all the people of the Emerald City, Dorothy knew that she had been highly favored by being permitted to use the Sawhorse on her journey. In the front seat of the wagon sat Dorothy and the Wizard. Uncle Henry and Aunt Em sat in the next seat, and the Shaggy Man and Omby Amby in the third seat. Of course Toto was with the party, curled up at Dorothy's feet, and just as they were about to start, Billina came fluttering along the path and begged to be taken with them. Dorothy readily agreed, so the yellow hen flew up and perched herself upon the dashboard. She wore her pearl necklace and 3 bracelets upon each leg, in honor of the occasion. Dorothy kissed Ozma good-bye, and all the people standing around waved their handkerchiefs, and the band in an upper balcony struck up a military march. Then the Wizard clucked at the Sawhorse and said, "Gid-dap!" and the wooden animal pranced away and drew behind him the big red wagon and all the passengers without any effort at all. A servant threw open a gate of the palace enclosure, that they might pass out, and so, with music and shouts following them, the journey was begun. "It's almost like a circus," said Aunt Em proudly. "I can't help feeling high and mighty in this kind of a turnout." Indeed, as they passed down the street, all the people cheered them lustily, and the Shaggy Man and the Wizard and the Captain General all took off their hats and bowed politely in acknowledgment. When they came to the Great Wall of the Emerald City, the gates were opened by the Guardian, who always tended them. Over the gateway hung a dull-colored metal magnet shaped like a horseshoe, placed around a shield of polished gold. "That," said the Shaggy Man impressively, "is the wonderful Love Magnet. I brought it to the Emerald City myself, and all who pass underneath this gateway are both loving and beloved." "It's a fine thing," declared Aunt Em admiringly. "If we'd had it in Kansas, I guess the man who held a mortgage on the farm wouldn't have turned us out." "Then I'm glad we didn't have it," returned Uncle Henry. "I like Oz better than Kansas, even. And this little wood sawhorse beats all the critters I ever saw. He don't have to be curried or fed or watered, and he's strong as an ox. Can he talk, Dorothy?" "Yes, Uncle," replied the child, "but the Sawhorse never says much. He told me once that he can't talk and think at the same time, so he prefers to think." "Which is very sensible," declared the Wizard, nodding approvingly. "Which way do we go, Dorothy?" "Straight ahead into the Quadling Country," she answered. "I've got a letter of introduction to Miss Cuttenclip." "Oh!" exclaimed the Wizard, much interested. "Are we going there? Then I'm glad I came, for I have always wanted to meet the Cuttenclips." "Who are they?" inquired Aunt Em. "Wait till we get there," replied Dorothy with a laugh. "Then you'll see for yourself. I've never seen the Cuttenclips, you know, so I can't 'zactly 'splain 'em to you." Once free of the Emerald City, the Sawhorse dashed away at tremendous speed. Indeed, he went so fast that Aunt Em had hard work to catch her breath, and Uncle Henry held fast to the seat of the red wagon. "Gently, gently, my boy," called the Wizard, and at this the Sawhorse slackened his speed. "What's wrong?" asked the animal, slightly turning his wooden head to look at the party with one eye, which was a knot of wood. "Why, we wish to admire the scenery, that's all," answered the Wizard. "Some of your passengers," added the Shaggy Man, "have never been out of the Emerald City before, and the country is all new to them." "If you go too fast you'll spoil all the fun," said Dorothy. "There's no hurry." "Very well, it is all the same to me," observed the Sawhorse, and after that he went at a more moderate pace. Uncle Henry was astonished. "How can a wooden thing be so intelligent?" he asked.
Why, I gave him some sawdust brains the last time I fitted his head with new ears, explained the Wizard. The sawdust was made from hard knots, and now the Sawhorse is able to think out any knotty problem he meets with. I see, said Uncle Henry. I don't, remarked Aunt Em, but no one paid any attention to this statement. Before long they came to a stately building that stood upon a green plain with handsome shade trees grouped here and there. "What is that?" asked Uncle Henry. "That," replied the Wizard, "is the Royal Athletic College of Oz, which is directed by Professor H.M. Wogglebug, T.E." "Let's stop and make a call," suggested Dorothy. So the Sawhorse drew up in front of the great building, and they were met at the door by the learned Wogglebug himself. He seemed fully as tall as the Wizard, and was dressed in a red and white checkered vest, and a blue swallow-tailed coat, and had yellow knee breeches and purple stockings upon his slender legs. A tall hat was jauntily set upon his head, and he wore spectacles over his big bright eyes.
Okay, looks like I actually did it right this time. I paused instead of doing it the other way. So if you wish to see the spectacle, I'm testing to see if I can catch any of the submarine stuff in this area right here. See if there's a, you know, testing. Great emphasis on the testing. Tractor, be ready! Oh, I threw both of them. Oh no! Oh no! Ah! Okay, I didn't mean to throw both of them. But that was pretty fantastic. Makes me so happy. Did I get any of the submarine fish? I have no idea. Let's check. Nope, I did not get any of the submarine fish as far as I know. But yeah, I definitely didn't mean to throw, because I could have crashed the game by doing that. So I definitely didn't mean to do that. Okay. Let's go down. No, might as well grab the tractor while I'm here. Oh, and I'll have to grab some more assistants. Yes, that's what they are. More assistants. That makes me ridiculously happy. But not that, you know. Oops. Not yet. 3, 2, 1. 2 of them. Go! I forgot to turn the volume on. Oh no, well, oh. Let's see if I can catch a good quality something or other. Seaweed. Okay, fine. Just because somebody asked for it, I'll turn the audio on. I keep forgetting to do that. Where is the... There they are. I keep forgetting to unmute the game. There we go. That should be it. Just because you asked for it, I'll do it again. Yes, I'm inside the sub. gosh, that's hilarious. Yeah, apparently I don't blow up the sub by doing that. I do, however, get fish. So yay! Well, no, the submarine doesn't float exactly. It's submerged. It's submerged. Apparently, the explosives doesn't blow the submarine. Apparently, it doesn't. uh, but yeah, see, this right here is level ocean, and this is the bottom. That's why we got the little stuff outside the windows. We're at the bottom of the ocean, or at least the bottom of the. Whoops. Okay. Well, I guess I'll do that. I was too close to the edge. Okay. I'll put the thing back on. um.
Welcome, Dorothy, said the Wogglebug, and welcome to all your friends. We are indeed pleased to receive you at this great temple of learning. I thought it was an athletic college, said the Shaggy Man. It is, my dear sir, answered the Wogglebug proudly. Here it is that we teach the youth of our great land scientific college athletics in all their purity. Don't you teach them anything else? Asked Dorothy. Don't they get any reading, writing, and arithmetic? Oh, yes, of course. They get all those and more, returned the professor. But such things occupy little of their time. Please follow me, and I will show you how my scholars are usually occupied. This is a class hour, and they are all busy. They followed him to a big field back of the college building where several hundred young Ozites were at their classes. In one place they played football, in another baseball, some played tennis, some golf, some were swimming in a big pool. Upon a river which wound through the grounds, several crews and racing boats were rowing with great enthusiasm. Other groups of students played basketball and cricket, while in one place a ring was roped in to permit boxing and wrestling by the energetic youths. All the collegians seemed busy, and there was much laughter and shouting. "This college," said Professor Wogglebug complacently, "is a great success. Its educational value is undisputed, and we are turning out many great and valuable citizens every year." "But when do they study?" asked Dorothy. "Study?" said the Wogglebug, looking perplexed at the question. "Yes, when do they get their arithmetic and geography and such things?" "Oh, they take doses of those every night and morning," was the reply. "What do you mean by doses?" Dorothy inquired wonderingly. "Why, we use the newly invented school pills, made by your friend the Wizard. These pills we have found to be very effective, and they save a lot of time. Please step this way, and I will show you our laboratory of learning." He led them to a room in the building where many large bottles were standing in rows upon shelves. "These are the algebra pills," said the professor, taking down one of the bottles. "One at night, on retiring, is equal to 4 hours of study. Here are the geography pills, one at night and one in the morning. In this next bottle are the Latin pills, one 3 times a day. Then we have the grammar pills, one before each meal, and the spelling pills, which are taken whenever needed." "Your scholars must have to take a lot of pills," remarked Dorothy thoughtfully. "How do they take 'em? In applesauce?" "No, my dear. They are sugar-coated, and are quickly and easily swallowed. I believe the students would rather take the pills than study, and certainly the pills are a more effective method. You see, Until these school pills were invented, we wasted a lot of time in study that may now be better employed in practicing athletics."
"Seems to me the pills are a good thing," said Omby Amby, who remembered how it used to make his head ache as a boy to study arithmetic.
"They are, sir," declared the Woggle-Bug earnestly. "They give us an advantage over all other colleges, because, at no loss of time, our boys become thoroughly conversant with Greek and Latin, mathematics and geography, grammar and literature. You see, they are never obliged to interrupt their games to acquire the lesser branches of learning."
"It's a great invention, I'm sure," said Dorothy, looking admiringly at the Wizard, who blushed modestly at this praise.
"We live in an age of progress," announced Professor Woggle-Bug pompously. "It is easier to swallow knowledge than to acquire it laboriously from books. Is it not so, my friends?"
"Some folks can swallow anything," said Aunt Em, "but to me this seems too much like taking medicine." "Young men in college always have to take their medicine one way or another," observed the Wizard with a smile. "And, as our professor says, these school pills have proved to be a great success. One day, while I was making them, I happened to drop one of them, and one of Billina's chickens gobbled it up. A few minutes afterward this chick got upon a roost and recited 'The Boy Stood on the Burning Deck' without making a single mistake. Then it recited 'The Charge of the Light Brigade,' and afterwards 'Excelsior.' You see, the chicken had eaten an elocution pill." They now bade good-bye to the Professor, and thanking him for his kind reception, mounted again into the Red Wagon and continued their journey. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10 of The Emerald City of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 10. How the Cuttenclips Lived. The travelers had taken no provisions with them, because they knew that they would be welcomed wherever they might go in the Land of Oz, and that the people would feed and lodge them with genuine hospitality. So about noon they stopped at a farmhouse and were given a delicious luncheon of bread and milk, fruits, and wheat cakes with maple syrup. After resting a while and strolling through the orchards with their host, a round, jolly farmer, they got into the wagon and again started the Sawhorse along the pretty winding road. There were signposts at all the corners, and finally they came to one which read, "Take this road to the Cuttenclips." There was a hand pointing in the right direction, so they turned the Sawhorse that way and found it a very good road, but seemingly little traveled. "I've never seen the Cuttenclips before," remarked Dorothy. "Nor I," said the Captain General. "Nor I," said the Wizard. "Nor I," said Billina. "I've hardly been out of the Emerald City since I arrived in this country," added the Shaggy Man. "Why, none of us has been there, then!" exclaimed the little girl. "I wonder what the Cuttenclips are like." "We'll soon find out," said the Wizard with a sly laugh. "I've heard they are rather flimsy things." The farmhouses became fewer as they proceeded, and the path was at times so faint that the Sawhorse had hard work to keep in the road. The wagon began to jounce, too, so they were obliged to go slowly. After a somewhat wearisome journey they came in sight of a high wall painted blue with pink ornaments. This wall was circular and seemed to enclose a large space. It was so high that only the tops of the trees could be seen above it. The path led up to a small door in the wall, which was closed and latched. Upon the door was a sign in gold letters, reading as follows: "Visitors are requested to move slowly and carefully, and to avoid coughing or making any breeze or draught." "That's strange," said the Shaggy Man, reading the sign aloud. "Who are the Cuttenclips, anyhow?" "Why, they're paper dolls," answered Dorothy. "Didn't you know that?" "Paper dolls? Then let's go somewhere else," said Uncle Henry. "We're too old to play with dolls, Dorothy." but these are different," declared the girl. "They're alive." "Alive!" gasped Aunt Em in amazement. "Yes, let's go in," said Dorothy. So they all got out of the wagon, since the door in the wall was not big enough for them to drive the Sawhorse and the wagon through it. "You stay here, Toto," commanded Dorothy, shaking her finger at the little dog. "You're so careless that you might make a breeze if I let you inside." Toto wagged his tail as if disappointed at being left behind, but he made no effort to follow them. The Wizard unlatched the door, which opened outward, and they all looked eagerly inside. Just before the entrance was drawn up a line of tiny soldiers with uniforms brightly painted with paper guns upon their shoulders. They were exactly alike from one end of the line to the other, and all were cut out of paper and joined together in the centers of their bodies. As the visitors entered the enclosure, the Wizard let the door swing back into place, and at once the line of soldiers tumbled over, fell flat upon their backs, and lay fluttering upon the ground. "Hi there!" called one of them. "What do you mean by slamming the door and blowing us over?" "I beg your pardon, I'm sure," said the Wizard regretfully. "I didn't know you were so delicate." "We're not delicate," retorted another soldier, raising his head from the ground. "We are strong and healthy, but we can't stand drafts." "May I help you up?" asked Dorothy. "If you please," replied the Inn soldier, "but do it gently, little girl." Dorothy carefully stood up the line of soldiers, who first dusted their painted clothes and then saluted the visitors with their paper muskets. From the end it was easy to see that the entire line had been cut out of paper, although from the front the soldiers looked rather solid and imposing. "I've a letter of introduction from Princess Ozma to Miss Cuttenclip," announced Dorothy. "Very well," said the Inn soldier, and blew upon a paper whistle that hung around his neck. At once a paper soldier in a captain's uniform came out of a paper house near by and approached the group at the entrance. He was not very big, and he walked rather stiffly and uncertainly on his paper legs, but he had a pleasant face with very red cheeks and very blue eyes, and he bowed so low to the strangers that Dorothy laughed, and the breeze from her mouth nearly blew the captain over. He wavered and struggled and finally managed to remain upon his feet. "Take care, miss," he said warningly. "You're breaking the rules, you know, by laughing." "Oh, I didn't know that," she replied. "To laugh in this place is nearly as dangerous as to cough," said the captain. "You'll have to breathe very quietly, I assure you." "We'll try to," promised the girl. "May we see Miss Cuttenclip, please?" "You may," promptly returned the captain. "This is one of her reception days. Be good enough to follow me." He turned and led the way up a path, and as they followed slowly, because the paper captain did not move very swiftly, they took the opportunity to gaze around them at this strange paper country. Beside the path were paper trees, all cut out very neatly and painted a brilliant green color. And back of the trees were rows of cardboard houses, painted in various colors, but most of them having green blinds. Some were large and some were small, and in the front yards were beds of paper flowers quite natural in appearance. Over some of the porches paper vines were twined, giving them a cozy and shady look. As the visitors passed along the street, a good many paper dolls came to the doors and windows of their houses to look at them curiously. These dolls were nearly all the same height, but some were cut into various shapes, some being fat and some lean. The girl dolls wore many beautiful costumes of tissue paper, making them quite fluffy, but their heads and hands were no thicker than the paper of which they were made. Some of the paper people were on the street, walking along or congregated in groups and talking together, but as soon as they saw the strangers they all fluttered into the houses as fast as they could go, so as to be out of danger. "Excuse me if I go edgewise," remarked the captain as they came to a slight hill. "I can get along faster that way, and not flutter so much." "That's all right," said Dorothy. "We don't mind how you go, I'm sure."
At one side of the street was a paper pump, and a paper boy was pumping paper water into a paper pail. The yellow hen happened to brush against this boy with her wing, and he flew into the air and fell into a paper tree, where he stuck until the Wizard gently pulled him out. At the same time the pail went into the air, spilling the paper water, while the paper pump bent nearly double.
"Goodness me!" said the hen. "If I should flop my wings I believe I'd knock over the whole village."
"Then don't flop them, please don't," entreated the captain. "Miss Cuttenclip would be very much distressed if her village was spoiled."
"Oh, I'll be careful," promised Billina.
"Are not all these paper girls and women named Miss Cuttenclips?" inquired Omby Amby. "No, indeed," answered the captain, who was walking better since he began to move edgewise. "There is but one Miss Cuttenclip, who is our queen, because she made us all. These girls are Cuttenclips, to be sure, but their names are Emily and Polly and Sue and Betty and such things. Only the queen is called Miss Cuttenclip."
"I must say this place beats anything I ever heard of," observed Aunt Em. "I used to play with paper dolls myself, and cut 'em out, but I never thought I'd see such things alive."
"I don't see as it's any more curious than hearing hens talk," returned Uncle Henry. "You're likely to see many queer things in the Land of Oz, sir," said the Wizard. "But a fairy country is extremely interesting when you get used to being surprised." "Here we are," called the captain, stopping before a cottage. This house was made of wood, and was remarkably pretty in design. In the Emerald City it would have been considered a tiny dwelling indeed, but in the midst of this paper village it seemed immense. Real flowers were in the garden, and real trees grew beside it. Upon the front door was a sign reading, "Miss Cuttenclip." Just as they reached the porch the front door opened, and a little girl stood before them. She appeared to be about the same age as Dorothy, and smiling upon her visitors, she said sweetly, "You are welcome." All the party seemed relieved to find that here was a real girl of flesh and blood. She was very dainty and pretty as she stood there welcoming them. Her hair was a golden blonde, and her eyes turquoise blue. She had rosy cheeks and lovely white teeth. Over her simple white lawn dress she wore an apron with pink and white checks, and in one hand she held a pair of scissors. "May we see Miss Cuttenclip, please?" asked Dorothy. "I am Miss Cuttenclip," was the reply. "Won't you come in?" She held the door open while they all entered a pretty sitting room that was littered with all sorts of paper, some stiff, some thin, and some tissue. The sheets and scraps were of all colors. Upon a table were paints and brushes, while several pair of scissors of different sizes were lying about. "Sit down, please," said Miss Cuttenclip, clearing the paper scraps off some of the chairs. "It is so long since I've had any visitors that I am not properly prepared to receive them. But I'm sure you will pardon my untidy room, for this is my workshop." "Do you make all the paper dolls?" inquired Dorothy. "Yes. I cut them out with my scissors, and paint the faces and some of the costumes. It is very pleasant work, and I am happy making my paper village grow." "But how do the paper dolls happen to be alive?" asked Aunt Em. "The first dolls I made were not alive," said Miss Cuttenclip. "I used to live near the castle of a great sorceress named Glinda the Good, and she saw my dolls and said they were very pretty. I told her I thought I would like them better if they were alive, and the next day the sorceress brought me a lot of magic paper. 'This is live paper,' she said, 'and all the dolls you cut out of it will be alive and able to think and to talk. When you have used it all up, come to me and I will give you more.'" Of course I was delighted with this present, continued Miss Cuttenclip, and at once set to work and made several paper dolls, which, as soon as they were cut out, began to walk around and talk to me. But they were so thin that I found that any breeze would blow them over and scatter them dreadfully, so Glinda found this lonely place for me, where few people ever come. She built the wall to keep any wind from blowing away my people, and told me I could build a paper village here and be its queen. That is why I came here and settled down to work and started the village you now see. It was many years ago that I built the first houses, and I've kept pretty busy and made my village grow finely, and I need not tell you that I am very happy in my work." "Many years ago!" exclaimed Aunt Em. "Why, how old are you, child?" "I never keep track of the years," said Miss Cuttenclip, laughing. "You see, I don't grow up at all, but stay just the same as I was when I first came here. Perhaps I'm older even than you are, madam, but I couldn't say for sure." They looked at the lovely little girl wonderingly, and the Wizard asked, "What happens to your paper village when it rains?" "It does not rain here," replied Miss Cuttenclip. "Glinda keeps all the rainstorms away, so I never worry about my dolls getting wet. But now, if you will come with me, it will give me pleasure to show you over my paper kingdom. Of course, you must go slowly and carefully, and avoid making any breeze." They left the cottage and followed their guide through the various streets of the village. It was indeed an amazing place, when one considered that it was all made with scissors, and the visitors were not only greatly interested, but full of admiration for the skill of little Miss Cuttenclip. In one place a large group of especially nice paper dolls assembled to greet their queen, whom it was easy to see they loved early. These dolls marched and danced before the visitors, and then they all waved their paper handkerchiefs and sang in a sweet chorus a song called "The Flag of Our Native Land." At the conclusion of the song they ran up a handsome paper flag on a tall flagpole, and all the people of the village gathered around to cheer as loudly as they could, although of course their voices were not especially strong. Miss Cuttenclip was about to make her subjects a speech in reply to this patriotic song, when the Shaggy Man happened to sneeze. He was a very loud and powerful sneezer at any time, and he had tried so hard to hold in this sneeze that, when it suddenly exploded, the results were terrible. The paper dolls were mowed down by dozens, and flew and fluttered in wild confusion in every direction, tumbling this way and that, and getting more or less wrinkled and bent. A wail of terror and grief came from the scattered throng, and Miss Cuttenclip exclaimed, "Dear me! Dear me!" and hurried at once to the rescue of her overturned people. "Oh, Shaggy Man, how could you?" asked Dorothy reproachfully. "I couldn't help it, really I couldn't," protested the Shaggy Man, looking quite ashamed. "And I had no idea it took so little to upset these paper dolls." "So little!" said Dorothy. "Why, it was most as bad as a Kansas cyclone." And then she helped Miss Cuttenclip rescue the paper folk and stand them on their feet again. Two of the cardboard houses had also tumbled over, and the little Queen said she would have to repair them and paste them together before they could be lived in again. And now, fearing they might do more damage to the flimsy paper people, they decided to go away. But first they thanked Miss Cuttenclip very warmly for her courtesy and kindness to them. "Any friend of Princess Ozma is always welcome here, unless he sneezes," said the Queen, with a rather severe look at the Shaggy Man, who hung his head. "I like to have visitors admire my wonderful village, and I hope you will call again." Miss Cuttenclip herself led them to the door in the wall, and as they passed along the street the paper dolls peered at them half fearfully from the doors and windows. Perhaps they will never forget the Shaggy Man's awful sneeze, and I am sure they were all glad to see the meat people go away. End of chapter 10.
Meet people. Oh my goodness. Uh, so we're on the third day and final day of the night market. So, um, if you want one more look into the explosion that happens, it's a good time. Because, yeah, it makes me happy. It makes me very happy. Woohoo. Uh, Wait until I sees you say that you're watching. And, yeah. I wonder. Oh, I might as well. I forgot to eat my lobster bisque last time. Because I'm still going to have the fish, and I actually got the blessing of water. So I should be able to use the good fishing, or the good bait for at least a couple of casts. There she blows! And I forgot. I forgot to. I forgot to. Lobster. I forgot to turn on. I keep forgetting to turn on the sound. I think this one's the game audio. Try it again. Because you gotta have a clip that has the game audio in it. There she blows! Well, that was great fun. Oh my gosh. Well, hey, this time I got lucky because I don't usually get some of the harder fishes to catch when I've got the bonus. Oops, I definitely don't want to waste that one. So too far again. Oh, not far enough. Okay, there we go. If I don't stay in the middle, they won't be perfect quality fish, and I'll end up like losing them. Like oh, don't. I got one of the platinum quality, or iridium quality, I should say. It's awesome. That was the last book for this stream. So I figure after tonight's fishing is done, I'll end up the stream. Oh, might as well change the thing back. Let's see. What is it that I'm looking for? Tools. I've got like lures coming out of my yeehaw. And I need to remember to use them because I don't generally use a lot of the lures. Like there's only like a few that I use. And the rest are like just kind of, I don't know, decorations, I guess. Not even worth selling. They were so they're so cheap, and I didn't get, when I was getting them, deconstructing them and getting some parts, you just weren't getting enough of a quality for it. So I can hear Faye yelling at me now. Go to sleep. And but yeah. What time is it? We are 2:34. So around 2:30ish is hours in is the last explosions. I think 1:30 was kind of when it started. And about the 2:30 mark. It's only longer just because I was doing the whole night market experiment. That was fun though. Okay, you have a great night, dear. I'm ending anyway, like right away, because it's almost time to go to bed. Well, at least in game anyway. Might as well finish on the day. And I wish those bubbles would last longer during the I go home because I need to get some of my energy back. Have a wonderful night, dear. I'm probably gonna have to eat to get my energy back. Oh my gosh. Misclicking and everything. So, you guys have an absolutely wonderful night, and we'll catch you next time. Bye. And